Today, I'll focus on Herbert Simon's Administrative Behavior, Chapter 3, Fact and Value in Decision-Making. To understand this chapter, we need to first define the terms. What do I mean by fact and value in the context of making administrative decisions? Factual elements in decision-making are objective, verifiable pieces of information that form the foundation of decision-making. They could be statistics, financial metrics, market trends, and historical records. They must be observable and verifiable. For example, your organization needs to decide whether to allocate limited resources between Program A and Program B. You rely on factual elements by analyzing data about the program's historical effectiveness in other similar organizations, analyzing potential downsides, calculating the financial costs, evaluate your organization's capacity to implement the programs, and establishing objective performance metrics to gauge the effectiveness of a program in your organization. It's similar to the process of deciding to take a medication. You would seek information about the medication's effectiveness in the general population and the potential side effects. Inquire about the cost and find out whether your medical insurance covers it and to what extent. Those critical pieces of data are objective and verifiable, much like the factual elements in administrative decision-making. They provide a robust foundation about which decision can be thoroughly evaluated and rationalized. What about value elements? They are subjective and often based on personal or organizational beliefs, priorities, and ethical values often expressed by terms like ought and should. For example, in the healthcare sector, deciding how to allocate limited medical resources may involve value elements like the principle of saving the most lives versus prioritizing the sickest patients. In an educational institution, deciding how to allocate limited resources may involve value elements like the principle of educating the largest number of students versus prioritizing a specific group of students. If you hold a value and the belief that the largest number of students' education should be prioritized, that's your ethical value. Driven by this ethical value, you choose to allocate the limited organizational resources accordingly. The challenge is that value elements can vary significantly among different individuals and organizations, making consensus difficult to achieve. Moreover, ethical terms and statements that express values and preferences are considered non-empirical. This means that they cannot be empirically tested because they are based on personal or cultural beliefs and preferences. For example, helping others is morally good. It's a non-empirical statement. It expresses moral value but cannot be proven or disproven through empirical evidence. Here is another example. You're an administrator and you uncover that your supervisor has been purposely manipulating data to favorably represent your department. What would you do? This poses an ethical dilemma. In this case, data-driven decision-making is not sufficient in guiding your decision. Many administrators use the term data-driven decision-making very frequently. Although data can inform the factual aspect of administrative decision-making, they fall short in guiding choices rooted in ethical values. The choice to report your supervisor's actions to higher authorities or to remain silent is not a decision that can be resolved through empirical testing or data analysis. This ethical dilemma underscores the limitation of purely data-driven approaches in administrative decision-making, particularly when ethical considerations are at the forefront. The information at hand does not inherently dictate which ethical values should be prioritized. Choosing to disclose your supervisor's fraudulent activities aligns with upholding integrity, trustworthiness, and the organization's greater good. This decision, while ethically sound, is accompanied with potential challenges. You need to navigate repercussions or even facing retaliation. This is why, if you want to blow the whistle, it's very important to handle the disclosure in a manner that you are legally protected. Most of the administrative decisions have both factual and value elements. Factual elements provide a rational foundation, and value elements inject human and ethical dimensions into decisions. Have you read the book The Imitation Game or seen the movie with the same name? It's about the English mathematician Alan Turing. During World War II, Alan Turing and his team successfully broke the Enigma code, enabling them to predict German attacks. They faced an ethical decision. Should they use this intelligence to prevent every German attack, thereby saving countless lives immediately, or selectively allow some attacks to proceed, inevitably sacrificing some soldiers' lives? The latter option, though seemingly counterintuitive, was aimed at concealing their breakthrough from the Germans, preventing the Germans from realizing that their Enigma code had been compromised. Imagine being in Alan Turing's shoes. What would you do? This decision could not be reached through empirical data alone. It was deeply rooted in profound ethical considerations, the immediate value of human life versus the strategic long-term benefit to the war effort. By choosing to strategically withhold information and allowing certain attacks to proceed, Turing's team grappled with the moral consequences of their decisions, understanding that each decision may lead to other losses, such as potential civilian casualties, the destruction of critical infrastructure, and the psychological impact on the British population and soldiers who were unaware of the strategic reasoning behind allowing those attacks. Turing and his team's choice to strategically withhold information while allowing certain attacks to proceed was driven by both ethical reasoning and empirical analysis. How do we determine if an administrative decision is correct? A correct administrative decision not only aligns with the organization's goals and objectives, but also adheres to ethical values and subjective considerations. This implies that the outcome alone, in the end, do not justify the methods used to achieve them, the means. Instead, the means themselves must be scrutinized through the lens of ethical values. This ensures that decisions are made not just in pursuit of organizational objectives, but also are ethically responsible. Moreover, once the organizational goals change, the evaluation of administrative decisions changes as well. For example, if a school whose objective is to improve student learning outcomes, a decision to adopt a new evidence-based teaching approach would align with this goal and could be deemed correct. However, those decisions are not static. They evolve with the changing goals and objectives of the organization. For example, if the same school shifts its goal towards innovation, a decision to allocate more resources to developing and testing new teaching approach becomes the correct decision under the new goal. Another case can be seen in the case of J. Robert Oppenheimer, the scientific director of the Manhattan Project, which developed the first nuclear weapons during World War II. After witnessing the devastating power of nuclear weapons, Oppenheimer became a vocal opponent of the nuclear weapons race in the post-war era. Oppenheimer's opposition was met with strong resistance from the U.S. government because the government's goal had evolved from primarily using nuclear technology as a critical tool to end World War II swiftly, particularly in the context of the Japanese conflict, to remaining and expanding its nuclear arsenal as a means of securing global dominance and deterrence during the Cold War. Initially, the development of nuclear weapons was seen as a necessary and urgent measure to bring a definitive end to the global conflict, especially in the face of the prolonged and costly war efforts in World War II. However, After the World War II, the focus shifted significantly. The government began to view nuclear capability as a cornerstone of its military and geopolitical strategy, aiming to establish a balance of power during the Cold War era. This shift from an immediate wartime necessity to a long-term strategy of deterrence and power projection marked a significant change in the government's goal, leading to a divergence from Oppenheimer's ethical stance against the proliferation and further development of nuclear weapons. Administrative decisions are rarely black and white. They include both factual and value elements. Administrators must constantly evaluate and reevaluate their decisions against the shifting organizational goals. This responsibility is further compounded by the need to navigate a complex terrain of ethical considerations, a critical aspect of leadership. There is a substantial emotional burden for those who take leadership roles. This is a key reason why many effective leaders find it difficult to remain in such a role for an extended period of time. The weight of making administrative decisions could be emotionally taxing. People who are primarily driven by the enjoyment of power may be inclined to overlook or undervalue the emotional aspects that are inherent to making moral decisions. This disattachment can lead to a disregard for the ethical implications of their decisions, prioritizing authority over moral responsibility. If so, it's worth contemplating whether the pursuit of power and the ability to empathetically engage in moral decision-making can coexist in an administrative role. What do you think?